Okay, maybe I'll stick to my phone.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I can see there are a couple of faculty members here I want to introduce. We have uh, uh, Pastor Josephine Anita, who is the academic dean of GSOL. She is present here with us, and we also have Pastor Richard Babu. I want to acknowledge their presence and welcome everyone, all the students who have joined. Today evening we have a graduating student from e-learning, uh, Sister Shiny Mathur, who is going to be presenting her research um amongst us today. And this is about, it deals with women in leadership. So she's put a lot of effort into this research, and so she's come up with, you know, uh, she has done research in her context, and she's come up with her findings. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be very insightful and a blessing to everyone. So yeah, so we're looking forward to hearing from Shiny as soon as she's set up.
Yeah, Richard sir can start sharing, or maybe
Okay.
sir can start sharing. However, I'll not be able to control it. Never mind.
Okay, is this fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
All right.
You just let me know when to change the next slide, and then I'll keep going.
Okay. Yeah, works. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, and praise God. And I really appreciate everyone, including the faculty team and the students, removing their precious time to come and hear me out on my presentation. So very, very honored and very touched and grateful for this time. So as a part of mini thesis subject in my MDiv program, I have chosen the topic of formulating an egalitarian model for the women of my church. So it's, of course, it's dealing with women in eldership. So my church, I'm part of a church which is part of commissioned churches whose stand is complementarian. And though my church gives huge opportunities to the women in terms of breaking of bread and leading in worship and anchoring and leading a Bible group study. However, the utmost hierarchy of decision that has to be taken for the church, that is the panel of eldership, is only confined to men. So you must be wondering what motivated me to take this topic was, though I was initially comfortable with the complementarian position, because it's always comfortable, right? To not lead. However, as I picked the passage and I visited certain scholars' opinions on that, I turned myself gravitating towards the egalitarian towards the egalitarian perspective, the view. So sir, next slide. You can skip the next slide and you can move ahead. So even as a complementarian, what always felt unsettled was the verse from Genesis 1:27 that said that both male and female are made in the image of God. So you can move forward. And so the question is, not personally for me, but if at all there is a woman who is called genuinely by God to lead, whether she can or she cannot lead. So this is what motivated me to pick up this topic. So moving ahead, my paper is divided it basically into four aspects. That's first, the introductory part is the purpose, problem, context, and limitation of my paper. I have picked then the second part is I've picked like few passages to do exegesis. Then I've picked certain topics, usually both the complementarians and the egalitarians usually wrestle and grapple with. And then I have come up with basic steps that a church can adapt to see in the coming generation women taking up the leadership position, as in like women taking the important directive decisions for the church. So we can move forward. Yeah, so the purpose, problem, context, and limitations, I will be, yeah. So the purpose is, yes, like I mentioned, yeah, I'm seeking more biblical clarity and perspective on certain important New Testament passages and characters, and formulating, that's important, formulating an egalitarian eldership model for my church in specific. The problem is that, yes, patriarchy is a problem, and it has not spared our church world, and it still remains divided. There are complementarians and traditionalists that hold to the idea that, yes, both male and female are equally made in the image of God, but however, they need to confine to their distinct roles, where the male has the headship role and the woman has a more subservient role. And the important part is that this approach pervades all realms of life, whereas egalitarian is we maintain the distinction that is to be celebrated, that is to be embraced. But however, irrespective of the positions, it is open to both men and women. Yeah, we can move forward, sir. Thank you. The context is, if one goes through my paper here, I have just summarized, I've just briefed up everything. But the context is that, initially in the early years, whenever there was, when the church began, and in the centuries after that, the women did, filled up positions of leadership, and there was seen this pattern-based exclusion of them once church became more institutionalized, and today's scenario is that women are not, in a lot of setups, are not given the position of leading. The limitations are, of course, the passages are limited. I've just picked a couple of passages and characters from New Testament. I've not picked up any passage from the Old Testament, but the characters, yes, I have. And of course, I have dealt with limited scholarly views. That's the limitation of my paper. And the interviews that I did was to do with just max 10 church members. So this is the limitation that influences my paper. Yeah, we can move forward, sir. Yeah, so you can move again forward. So one more paper. Yeah, so 1 Corinthians 11-16 and 1 Corinthians 14:34-36 are the passages. I'm just going to brief up with the exegesis that led me in 1 Corinthians 11-16 to understand that Paul's main concern was always about the order of the church, and the whole unveiling and not the women not having the head covering was actually bringing in distraction, and the focus was shifting from the glory of God onto the women. So Paul was alluding to the creation order and talking about the preeminence of God, and Jesus being subservient is in a way trying to tell the congregation that, in a relationship dynamics, there needs to be an order. And 1 Corinthians 14:34-36, what I understood was, after doing basic exegesis, is that either the women who were prophesying, but they were allowed, because nothing in the passage suggests that they were disallowed from weighing the prophecies, but as they were doing this, they ended up weighing the prophecies of the men who were their husbands, and this was compromising the creation order. Or it could be that the manner in which the women were speaking, that is the the manner in which they were talking was an issue, and they had to submit to the law of the church's order. There is a concept of being submissive to this kind of respect and order, and this we see in Job 29:21, and therefore they were asked to be silent. They were silenced, and Paul was so emphatic about it. So we can move forward. Yeah, 1 Timothy 2:11-15. because when we read when we do exegesis, we read everything that the author has written, and Paul doesn't prohibit women from teaching or prophesying or praying anywhere else, but here he doing that is of great concern. And what turns out is that these women who were gullible, because we know from the context, who were gullible, were getting swayed by the false teachings, the false doctrines that was which these false teachers were bringing in. So, and then this is one of the reason why he's again being very emphatic about them being quiet and being in full submission. So the characters I have taken are Anna, Priscilla, and Junia. Anna, the prophet, we see her in Luke, and the author of Luke, his purpose has always been, we understand that it's evangelism, and when we look at the entire Gospel of Luke, he has presented women in a very renewed way, and so keeping this in mind, when Anna is given the honorary title of being the prophet, it's somewhere the author is always trying to draw a parallel between the Old Testament prophetic order, where Simon is seen as someone who wants to see the Messiah and die, as compared to the New Testament prophetic order, where it's about, as in case of Anna, seeing the Messiah and with joy going and proselytizing it, going and telling them the good news. So this should take great note. Priscilla is always mentioned first. It's unusual of people of that culture to mention the women first. Then she's the one who's filling up Apollos, who himself turns out to be a preacher. And Priscilla is the one who is meeting the inadequacy in Apollos' teaching, and it does call for having an authority over the men. The whole compartmentalization is happened because of the women not being able or not allowed biblically to have authority. But here we see Priscilla is doing that, and the fact that the author doesn't mention the content of it, he's clearly drawing attention to the fact that Priscilla and Aquila, the Priscilla appears to be the primary one teacher who is filling up Apollos on this. Junia, till a lot of early of translations, Junia was held as a woman, and she said that she's among the apostles. But we don't. For those who argue that Junia is a male, we basically don't have any attested literature where Junia is actually a short form of the masculine name Junianus. It is, in fact, it is a female. And though many traditionalists and complementarians agree to the fact that Junia is a female, the question lies whether Junia is, and also an apostle, but whether she had the authority over men, the teaching authority, or just general authority over men. And as my topics come ahead in the contentions, I will talk about the authoritative office. Yeah, so now these are some of the topics. Usually, there are some few main of them, but I have picked only 4. So first being, why all 12 men? So this is like, this is one of the arguments that drives the vehicle of the complementarians, and they're like, the 12 were men. It had to, he never chose women. The fact that Jesus also challenged male prerogatives when he was asked about divorce and he was asked about stoning the women, it appears that here when he speaks, those 12 men were more so for cultural reason and not theological reason, which otherwise would have been an universal mandate, I feel. Again, he scandalized the culture not just by interacting with women, but by touching the lepers, by interacting with the non-Jews and the slaves and eunuchs. We don't have any of these among among these 12. So should these people be excluded from any leadership position? And then we don't have Gentiles, we don't have Judeans. We just the 12 were among the the well-to-do economic class. So should the leadership positions be confined only to these men or to only Jews? Again, so could it be more understanding to say that it was an analogy for the 12 tribes of Israel? Again, we have church fathers from Origin to Hervius who did say that among the 72, there were women. And again, these 12 men did not withstand the horrendous act of crucifixion. It was the women who stayed back. Okay, so moving to the second contention, like I mentioned, Junia, and because the point is that many of the traditionalists and complementarians believe that there is an authoritative teaching and a non-authoritative teaching, where didasco is more of authoritative and katecho is, and I hope I am pronouncing it right, but informal instruction, and the women are allowed to do the informal instruction. That is, they're allowed to practice their gift, but they can't do the big T. That is, they can't do the didasco. They can't teach. However, New Testament doesn't make that kind of it doesn't make that kind of distinctions, and Luke does use this interchangeably. And then moving forward, it's about examples of women in authority. Like I've written more deal about them in my paper, but to come with Miriam, who's leading Israel out, about her celebratory song, the Deborah. Deborah was clearly, her leadership activity was public activity. We have Huldah. Huldah was considered among the reputed prophets to whom the King Josiah sought counsel. There is Kroger's research which talks about the art forms from 2nd and 3rd century, where very clearly speaks of women filling up positions of bishops and deacons and where they were ordained. And many more. Like to say, Saint Jerome is applauding Marcella for her teaching, where she counteracted the heretics. We have he even applauding Paula for being besides him and building monasteries. The revival moments, you visit the revival moments and you see a surge of women filling up the leadership positions, and just to see that every moment when it became more institutionalized and we saw less and less of women and more of men. Phoebe as a deacon, Paul says prostatus and benefactor, and you cannot dissociate the position of authority from a benefactor. Lydia as a patron. Patrons were early converts. To give an analogy, today's small Bible study, it was back then, and to say which those kind of setups then grew up in bigger churches, and to say that she would have not had a teaching authority over the men who were initially coming in, learning to know what gospel is, I would say it's a little unfair. Paul's co-workers, Euodia and Syntyche, and their conflict was affecting the well-being of church. And he says his co-workers, and they have wrestled alongside me is a comment of great significance, I feel. Yes, sir, we can move ahead. Yeah. So now I'm coming to the last part, the fourth part of my paper, and that is developing an eldership egalitarian model. So as I did my exegesis and I visited and I weighed and understood both the scholars' opinions about these different positions, I've realized that the scripture doesn't explicitly exclude women from any leadership position. So hoping and praying that my church would be open in the coming years to allow women to take the leadership positions. I have developed certain basic steps that can be taken. So no, sorry, we can stay on the first page, a page before of that. Yeah, thank you so much. So debates, because I was interviewing and there were a lot of elders and more mature experienced people also. I've taken youth's interview as well. But what I realized was that people are not convinced whether women can fill up an eldership position. Not that we are trying to, but if at all there is a woman who's called genuinely for this position, whether she can or she cannot. So there's a so I think debates would open up conversations and dialogues which have faded away from our even from our church culture. So that would be a very good beginning point to engage theologically people of two opposing views. Exposition exposition series. Like the passages that I included, and there are other more passages as well. I think a detailed study of these passages could help open up the hearts and minds of the church people, because this is not something that would happen over time. It's gradually going to take probably years, or a generation would have to pass by. So, but for this, people need to understand the wailing, the headship, the silencing, the learn from your husband. They need to understand this in a better way. The third is preaching on women. We seldom hear preachers come and pick a character who's a woman. Many of my interviewees said that they wouldn't walk into a church setup where a woman is a pastor or a leader, and that took, because they are convinced of the creation order of the headship, and they're convinced that women cannot lead. And yes, we have, as compared to men, we do have lesser women who have filled up the leadership position, or who are out there or worthy of being taken into our sermons. But spite of the cultural pressure and the expectation of the culture to be glorified only in their domestic chores, there were still these women, even in the Old Testament time and in the New Testament time, who did this, and they need to be spoken about. So this is something that will, loosen up the women against their own kind. So that is one of the things that we must do. We need to hear more about women also, conditioning the mind. Okay, so one of the interviewees said that women are very unstable. Women cannot keep the calm. They're very emotional. They're very hormonal. So, and this is something that, in fact, is true. But I think even as women, we have separated this aspect of our existence, that we are the ones who are more governed bodily. I'm talking about in physical terms. We are governed a lot by our hormones, but we have never embraced that fact. We never speak about how intricately the 28-day cycle affects our thinking, our physicality, and all of that. So so this imbalances that we see is also what I know for sure is the sin that has crept in, the sin that has taken away the nutrition from the soil, the sin that has created deficiencies in humans' body, who are so delicately, affected by these deficiencies. Yes, women are more, they appear more in sync with their hormonal cycles, but we are having a very difficult time with increasing fertility issues and PCOD and PCOS and all the other hormonal imbalances because of this. So a great chunk of our teaching and conditioning of not just women, but I think even men has to happen about our physical health, because we are integrated beings. We cannot separate what we do to our bodies from our spiritual health. So that aspect really needs attention. And yes, giving more opportunities. Unless they're given more opportunities, unfortunately, women do have to prove their worth even in a church scenario. So unless that is done, the trust of the church gradually would not be able to be built for what women can do. So yes, I think, and I pray that this kind of a model, if embraced, would help pathway of a lot of women who later might be called into leadership positions. For concluding, I just like to say that the authors, as I see the large picture, I feel that the authors of the New Testament, they always try to strike a balance by not completely discarding the traditions and the cultures, and also embracing the renewed understanding of women that gospel about. And I think respect we need to respect that, we need to understand that, we need to make uh, take not take everything as prescriptive, but take the principle to that here they were allowed and there they were disallowed, and what could have been the reason. They were probably trying to maintain that tension. It's still because it, Christianity was something that gave a lot of freedom to women and slaves, and it was looked down upon by the other pre-existing cultures of that time. So sometimes we probably have to mellow down a little bit and probably not give women that much of openness, and that's probably what Paul was exhorting a woman to do. And another thing is the eschatological society. I mean, we know that what awaits us, the kind of world and the kind of community that awaits us, does not have any distinctions based on gender or any of that sort. So we are not supposed to wait to what would happen, but in fact, in all our strength and might and help from God, and to reflect that kind of eschatological community, and that can happen if we are open to the idea of women also equally being called by God to fill up the leadership position. And here I conclude my presentation. Thank you so much.